Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we're talking about rust encapsulating paints. So I have POR-15, KBS Rust Seal, Chassis Saver, Rust Bullet, Eastwood Rust Encapsulator Platinum, also Raptor Liner and VHT roll bar and chassis paint. What holds up the best? So to test each one of these products I have behind me here, first thing I did was I took steel test panels and I sandblasted them with aluminum oxide blasting media. I think it was like between 60 and 80 grit blasting media that I roughed up the surface of each one of these test panels to try and get, some good adhesion. Next thing I did was I divided the test panel in half and taped off half the test panel. So the bottom half of these test panels I'm going to show you were pre-rusted using a vinegar, salt, and hydrogen peroxide mixture. The next thing I did was I also have aluminum test panels. So I tested the adhesion of each one of these products on an aluminum substrate in addition to a steel substrate. The reason that I did that is the Chassis Saver specifically said that it did not adhere well to aluminum, so I wanted to test the rest of them to see whether or not they were going to work with aluminum as well. Now, as far as my testing procedures, so the first thing I tested was going to be chip resistance, and the way I tested chip resistance is I took a 4-pound, 3-inch in diameter steel ball, dropped it from 4.5 feet onto each one of these test panels. The next thing that I tested was adhesion. So the way I conducted my adhesion test was I created a grid pattern with a razor blade on each test panel. Once I had a grid pattern that was 10 by 10 or 100 individual squares in this test area, I then covered it with duct tape and then pulled the duct tape off, kind of like how you'd remove wax from your chest if you're into that sort of thing. The final thing that I tested was flexibility. Now, to test flexibility, what I did was I took each one of these test panels, clamped it in my bench vise, and then bent it as far as I could until the coating actually started to chip along that, bent edge. So I'm gonna bring you guys over to the bench. We're gonna go over each one of these products individually, and I'll show you what's good and what's bad. All right, so taking a look at these first two products I have here. This one is VHT roll bar and chassis paint. This one is Raptor Liner, or AKA bedliner. I put these in here basically because I knew somebody out there was going to ask about bedliner and regular chassis paint. So taking a look at the VHT chassis paint, I had excellent adhesion on the bare metal. I had nothing come off on my chips, on my chip testing. But when you get down here, you can see where the edge of the rust is, right here on this line. You flip it over to the back side, and the adhesion isn't nearly as good as what it was on the bare metal, but it was still pretty good. The chip testing on the rust, again, sort of the same thing. Not as good as the bare metal, but still not bad by any means. And the flexibility of this product really isn't that bad. There's a couple little chips here on the edges, but as you can see, I bent it 180 degrees without any issue. Taking a look at the aluminum, same deal. No adhesion problems with the aluminum. All in all, for the price, it's not a bad product. It would not be my first choice to put over top of rust, but if you prep it correctly, you can get a really good finish out of this stuff. So taking a look at the Raptor Liner panels. Now, to prep this, I used Raptor Liner's acid etch primer. I put it over top of the bare metal and over top of the rust. So that is what Raptor Liner suggests if you're going to coat any sort of bare metal with Raptor Liner, is to use their acid etch primer. So that is what I used. Getting into the results that I got on the bare metal were excellent. I had no adhesion problems at all. The chip resistance was excellent. I had no adhesion problems with chip resistance. But unfortunately, if I flip this over, putting Raptor Liner over top of rust is not a good idea. The adhesion, as you can see, is absolutely terrible. All in all, it's a good product if the surface is clean and prepped correctly. I mean, that's true of a lot of paints out there, but it's imperative that you do not put Raptor Liner over top of rust. One other thing about the Raptor Liner, if you guys take a look here, I didn't have any adhesion problems with the aluminum either, but there's one other side effect of putting Raptor Liner on metal that you guys may or may not realize. So if you listen to this, this is the VHT. Listen. The Raptor Liner is capable of acting as a sound deadener. So if you put this on the floor pan of a car, you will have some sort of mild sound deadening capability with the Raptor Liner. Whereas if you put regular POR-15 or VHT or any of these other coatings that I'm going to show you, there's no sound deadening in them. Listen. So like I alluded to a second ago with the Raptor Liner, if a manufacturer offers any sort of metal prep or primer for their coating, I went ahead and bought that as well. Now what I did was I treated each one of these substrates with the manufacturer's specified cleaner degreaser and their metal prep before I put each one of the coatings down. Some of these products we're going to go over, that manufacturer doesn't offer a metal prep, so I simply followed the directions that were written on the can for their metal prep, what they suggest. As far as these metal preps, so I have Rust Bullet Metal Blast, POR-15 Metal Prep, and KBS Pre-Paint Primer. The reason I'm bringing this up is the active ingredient in all three of these products is exactly the same. It is phosphoric acid. These two, it's around 10% phosphoric acid. This one, they give you a range between 10 and 20%, so let's call it 15. If you guys take a look at my last video that I just shot, I'll put a card up in the corner to it. It's on rust converters, and the best rust converter to take rust that is iron oxide and turn it into iron phosphate, the best products out on the market for rust converters are phosphoric acid products. The reason that I'm bringing all of this up is because the best product that I found out of that video was a product called Rust Cutter. Rust Cutter has 3 times the amount of phosphoric acid as POR-15, the KBS, and it has twice the amount as the Rust Bullet. So in my opinion, I don't think any one of these make a huge difference in the performance of the coating. As long as you treat it with some sort of phosphoric acid metal prep, I think you will get great results. The reason that I say this is because a gallon of the POR-15 metal prep is the same price as a gallon of the Rust Cutter metal prep. And like I said, there is 3 times the amount of the active ingredient or phosphoric acid in Rust Cutter as what the POR-15 has. So essentially, you're paying for water. So with all of that said, here's the results I got. Now, they're all extremely similar. The performance of each one of these products, guys, if I didn't mark them, it would be really hard to tell them apart. So taking a look at the POR-15, the adhesion of the POR-15 on the bare metal was excellent. The chip resistance was excellent. The adhesion on the rusted metal, again, was excellent. The only thing that the POR-15 could have possibly improved on was the flexibility. And for me to get this POR-15 to chip like this, what I had to do was I had to bend this as far as I could, as you guys could see. And then what I did was I clamped this edge in the vise and basically just started pinching this edge to try and get this paint to fail. And eventually it did, but when it does fail, guys, it comes off in large amounts. It's not a small chip that's gonna form. You'll have one little edge that'll flake and you're gonna pull back 1/4 inch of, you know, the coating. But as long as the coating doesn't chip, guys, it's extremely durable, works well. Your diligence in the prep work, again, I think is gonna play a larger role than the product itself. So taking a look at the chassis saver, it's pretty much a similar scenario on the bare metal. Excellent adhesion, excellent flexibility. As you can see, I pinched the edge in the vise and it still never chipped, never flaked. In that regard, it did outperform the POR-15. Unfortunately, the rust adhesion on this was absolutely terrible. Now, like I alluded to earlier, I did not use any sort of phosphoric acid prep like I did with the KBS Rust Seal or the POR-15. I simply did what was written on the can. Now, had I used the POR-15 or the KBS metal prep with this product, I could pretty much assure you that you would end up with the exact same result as what I got with the POR-15. Again, other than this section that had different prep than the other two, there isn't a whole lot different about this product as compared to the other two products. I think the one thing that is nice about the chassis saver is it is a little bit more flexible than what the POR-15 is. But let's be serious, guys, if something on your car or your vehicle or whatever you're dealing with is this bent, that it is bent 180 degrees, you have bigger problems than paint. You have major structural problems going on if something on your implement or your car or whatever you're working on is bent 180 degrees like this. As far as the adhesion on aluminum, Chassis Saver says right on the can that the product is not supposed to be used on aluminum. I had absolutely zero issue with the adhesion of Chassis Saver on aluminum. So I'm not sure why that's written on the can the way it is, but at any rate, personally, I did not have any issue. Taking a look finally over here at the KBS. Again, it's going to be a real similar result to the other two. So excellent adhesion on the bare metal, chip resistance was excellent, flexibility was excellent, and because this was prepped, the adhesion on the rusted surface was also excellent. As far as one product being leaps and bounds better than the other, as far as these three are concerned, guys, personally, I don't see it. One thing I can say about these three products is you have to be very mindful if you're coating an edge like this. So say, for example, this was bare steel and I wanted to coat this hard edge like this. These products go on extremely thin. And what will happen is you'll end up with a thin spot along this edge, and that is where it's going to flake and peel. And when it flakes and peels, guys, I mean, it's a lot. It's pretty substantial. Even this, the Chassis Saver, I mean, guys, that is not a small peel. Check this out. So when it goes big time, and you have to be certain that you're prepping this correctly. Otherwise, when it starts flaking, it's not a small amount. So the last two products we're going to talk about here is going to be the Rust Bullet and the Eastwood Rust Encapsulator Platinum. But as far as the performance of the Rust Bullet, it had excellent adhesion on the bare metal. The chip resistance, again, was excellent. The flexibility of the product was about as good as anything I tested. And the adhesion on the rusted surface was just as good as the bare metal. All in all, it is an excellent product. Personally, I don't know that I would use it, and it's strictly just personal preference. My biggest setback with this stuff, guys, is the color. As you can see, the silver color that it is, you can still see the brush marks from where I actually applied it. It's not like the POR-15 or the KBS or the Chassis Saver that, you know, they dry super flat and they almost look sprayed when you're done. This stuff, it's blatantly obvious that you brushed it on. So if I was going to use this stuff, I would put some sort of top coat over top of it just so it looked a little bit better. Moving on to the Eastwood Rust Encapsulator Platinum. Pretty similar performance. I did not use any sort of prep work with this, so I did what's written on the can. Loosened any loose rust that was on the surface, painted the product right over top of it, and this is what we got. So the adhesion on the bare metal was excellent. The chip resistance, again, was excellent. The flexibility was not as good as some of the other stuff that I tested. This was probably the worst product as far as flexibility that I tested out of any of them. As you guys can see, there's a little bit of chipping over here on the corner, but finally, the last thing is going to be adhesion over the rusted surface. Now, it did much better than the Chassis Saver, which had the exact same prep, but it was not perfect. The Rust Bullet, again, performed better on the, the adhesion test over rusted surface. But if I had prepped it with some sort of metal prep, I bet you any money that it would have performed just as well as the Rust Bullet, just as well as the POR-15, just as well as basically anything else in the test. So take that for what it is, guys. Kind of the same deal with the Eastwood as it is the Rust Bullet. I'm just not a fan of the color, and I would want to top coat it just because I think the silver that they use is sort of hideous, but the product isn't bad. It's not the most flexible stuff in the world, but it does a decent job. So finally, guys, these are the only three products that I would really recommend. As you guys saw, out of all the products that I tested, I got really good results with these three. Now the Raptor, the reason that I recommend the Raptor is if you're coating the bottom of a car, the sound deadening and the sound dampening capability of this product is really, really good. The chip resistance is excellent, and the adhesion is awesome as long as you're not putting it directly over the top of rust. So there's plenty of prep that you have to do with the Raptor to make it adhere. I may play more with this stuff in the future, but at any rate, you know, the Rust Bullet and the KBS, again, are good products as well, as you guys saw from my testing. Now, as far as like the KBS versus like the POR-15 or the Chassis Saver, the flexibility of the KBS was better than the POR-15. The adhesion's the same, the chip resistance is the same, but it is more flexible and it did not peel, whereas the POR-15 did. So that's why I ranked that ahead of the POR-15. The Rust Bullet, again, good adhesion, good chip resistance, just more flexible than the Eastwood product. So that's what I would recommend, guys. Obviously, don't put the Raptor directly over rust, but the other two with the proper phosphoric acid prep, you'll get excellent results if you're diligent with your prep. So as always, guys, if you guys like the video, hit like. You want to see more content, go down and hit subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys.